is my privilege to welcome to First Church today Greg Mays. Of interesting and exciting people who live in this neighborhood and work in this neighborhood, Greg Mays has to be one of them. He is the son of two educators, and we just discovered that his father taught Clarence Ashby in school, and so Clarence kept looking and looking until he asked the question, which is what you must do.
Absolutely.
And he discovered that Greg's dad taught him, and Greg's mother, Dr. Luberta Mays, was a wonderful educator all across the city, a professor at Medgar Evers College and an elder at Presbyterian Church of St. Albans. Greg went to Harvard Business School and has tremendous talent, but chose to come back here to work and to serve. So Greg, can you tell us a little about how you got to this point in your life, significant things on your journey?
Okay, well, let me begin by saying thank you for the opportunity to be a part of another service here at this church. I must say that every time I come to this church, I'm surprised, and pleasantly surprised. This particular occasion, surprised by the openness of the church and you all's outward embrace of people who obviously just sort of, I know there's some Spanish speakers here, but I dare say that it's not the native tongue of the majority of the people here, and it just sort of warms my heart anytime I see anyone just sort of reaching beyond whom they are to other folks in the community. So thank you for that, and thank you again for having me. So, your question was just sort of how did I get here and that kind of good stuff. All right, well, I was actually born and raised here in Jamaica, right over at Jamaica Hospital, if you believe that. And I was the fourth of five boys born to Frederick and Luberta Mays, my dear father, who I just left a half an hour ago at the breakfast table, and my mother, who passed in April or so. I started my academic career at PS 15 in St. Albans, Queens. I'd sing the song for you, but I don't want to bore you with that. But it was really just a wonderful, just sort of early experience, if you will. And then I had the good fortune of actually the second half of my elementary school years, I went over to a school called the Bank Street School for Children, which is in Manhattan. And at the time, my mother was working on her doctorate at Columbia, and it was easy for her to just kind of move us around and have us get on the train and go to school while she was going to school, if you will. So I spent a couple of very, very interesting years at Bank Street, and then I came back to reality, if you will, because in very many ways Bank Street was not reality. But I went to IS 59 Queens, and all right for IS 59, and had really, really just sort of 3 or 4 fantastic years at IS 59, where I recall, in, 6-3, and then I was in 7SP, and then 9SP, and then I went to Bayside High School back when they used to bus children all around the city in the interest of, I guess, a good education, although my education at IS 59 was quite fine at the time. So I did go to Bayside High School, and there, interestingly, as I look back at that experience, although it was a great academic experience, high school was not a super high point, in my life up until that point. And I think because, primarily because we were bused. And we were not, fantastically welcomed at the school. It was still a predominantly white institution at the time. So it was a very different experience than the folks who I'm sure who stayed in the neighborhood and went to Andrew Jackson High School or August Martin High School. I think there was a different kind of spirit that they benefited from. But nonetheless, it was a very interesting experience. So I did 4 years, 3 years, 10th, 11th, 12th at Bayside High School. And I must say, I did not receive a whole lot of counseling And I think that that's probably, tragically, like it is today. My nephew graduated from Martin Van Buren High School a year or two ago, and there was not a fantastic amount of college counseling going on at that school either. I think they had one college counselor for some ungodly, number of students and stuff. So as a result, I really didn't apply to, many different places, although I was a pretty good student. My mother at the time was working at Medgar Evers College, and I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go to Medgar Evers College. And I went over there for a year. She was chairing the teacher education department at the time. And had a really good time at Medgar Evers College for the year that I did. I did well academically. And then my older brother's girlfriend, who I secretly had a crush on, came back, from Howard University in Washington, D.C. with these photographs of her and her friends. And I was like, you know what? That is the place that I need to be right there. So I say all that to say that, there really was not a whole lot of, purpose, if you will, in my getting to Howard. I actually got there because my older brother's girlfriend, who I was secretly in love with, came back with the pictures of she and her friends, and I said, I need to be there. And, just based on that, I actually applied to Howard fairly late in the year, and they accepted me. And not only did they accept me, but they gave me a scholarship based on the grades that I received. And I would say that that was a really, really tremendous turning point for me in my life. Until then, I was a local kid. I did not have the good fortune of being able to go down south, every year, as some of my friends who had southern roots, would do. I did not have the good fortune of being from the Caribbean, so no one could send me to Jamaica for the summer, And so I was pretty much a local kid playing knock hockey in the regular little, summer program at 176 or so. But going down to Howard just really, I think it expanded my horizons, expanded just sort of opportunities. My very first year there, I went to, I actually had an aunt who lived down in Washington, D.C., and I moved in with her because, didn't have any housing, and she used to make me lunch in a bag lunch every day, and used to put a snack pack pudding, if you remember those from back in the day, in the bag. And I got to tell you, it was a little embarrassing to be walking on college campus with a little brown bag with a snack pack pudding in it, but that did not stop my friends from ravenously, attacking my bag lunch and eating this pudding. But my first year. Go ahead.
As you see, Greg has great stories.
Indeed.
But Greg is doing something wonderful in the neighborhood. You had options with different companies you worked for, but you came back to Jamaica and founded an organization. Can you tell us what the name of the organization is and why you founded it?
Indeed. The name of the organization is A Better Jamaica, and not that I think that Jamaica was deficient or anything, but only because I think that individually I strive to improve myself every day, week, year, and I think neighborhoods can do the same. So back in the summer of 2007, I went over to Forest Park, and we saw The Wizard of Oz, myself and a couple of nephews and a next-door neighbor's child, and had a great time, and just left there saying, why do I have to leave my neighborhood for a wonderful community building experience? And the answer was, I did not. Being an action-oriented person, I started this organization called A Better Jamaica. I had never worked for a nonprofit. I didn't necessarily know how they worked, but I knew that I needed one if I was going to just sort of ask people for money. So I started the organization, and the first, right around this January 2007 was when it was started, so right about now, 7 years ago. And I asked several of the elected representatives for some funds. Leroy Comrie, in particular, said, here's $5,000. We took that $5,000 and we showed 2 movies in St. Albans Park. Happy Feet and Pride, two of my favorite movies. And so that was that summer. For the last 4 or 5 summers, we've shown probably 21 movies spread across 5 Jamaica parks here in the neighborhood. And then this nonprofit just kind of grew insanely to the point that it's beyond a full-time job, but pays about 1/10, the pay of what you should be making and stuff.
There's a particular focus of
Thank you.
of a Better Jamaica, which a lot of the members here could help with. Can you talk about your work in schools and with young people?
Yes. So I have been raising, or I think I'm finished, but my now 20-year-old nephew was under the legal guardianship of my mother, who passed in April. And my mother was 84, but she was a robust 84. And but nonetheless, after raising 5 boys in particular, she said, "Look, I'm out of that business in particular. Greg, you're here. Why don't you just sort of do this heavy lifting, if you will?" So I did sort of the heavy parenting lift, as in take the child back and forth to school and all the rest of that good stuff. And when I was looking for a school for Douglas, I noticed when I was looking at just sort of schools that just sort of perform better academically, that parents were coming into the schools and changing the student-teacher ratio or adult-child ratio, particularly in the younger grades. And I said, well, we don't have a whole lot of stay-at-home parents, at least not by choice, but we do have an abundance of senior citizens. So the program that I developed called Jamaica Reads, and essentially we deploy senior citizens for 3 mornings a week, and we were in PS 48, and now we're in PS 36, and we essentially provide one-on-one, just sort of reading instruction to students who are struggling with the acquisition of their reading skills. And it's a fantastic program. The only difference is that our goal is to pay a stipend to our tutors. So we pay just, a modest $11 an hour or so. It's not going to make anybody rich. They're 6 hours a week, still $66. But I always say that, you can always go to Target and get yourself a nice sheet set and all the rest of that good stuff. So that's what we do. And the plan is to expand the program as much as we can.
Yeah. It's a wonderful program, and Greg is being modest, but when you see what has happened to the test scores of the children who have had the support of adults who have just said, rather than watching TV, I'm going to give 6 hours a week, it's made a tremendous impact. Last question. Are there some guiding principles which lead you in your work in achieving as a person and serving the neighborhood?
I would say that the guiding principle is the Nike campaign, just do it, You may not have all the resources to accomplish what it is that you'd like to do, but just start out modestly. And I use as an example, when I was looking around the neighborhood, I saw the growing size of the Spanish-speaking immigrant population, and it didn't seem as if folks were doing a whole lot of cultural programming for that audience. So I conceived this program called Cinema en Español, and my goal was to do a movie per month from September through June. And of course, I didn't have enough money to do that. So I ended up just sort of showing 2 movies, a movie, one of my favorites called Like Water for Chocolate, and another film called Innocent Voices. And we did it at Jamaica Center for Arts and Learning. And just based on doing those 2 films, when the Department of Cultural Affairs announced the Cultural Immigrant Initiative, there were 2 city council people in particular reached out to me and said, hey, would you like some of this money? And that does not happen often when someone reaches out to you and says, would you like some of this money? And the answer was, of course I do. So we are going to launch in March 2 programs. One is called South Asian Delights, and the target is the growing South Asian population here in Jamaica, and the other one is going to be called Latino Delights. And rather than just a movie, it'll be an evening of music for an hour, and then food for an hour, and then a film for an hour or 2. And so we'll do at least 8 of those between now and June. And just this morning, I was working on my National Endowment for the Arts application so that I can get the funding to do not only those September through June, but to do an African Delights Festival and a Caribbean Delights as well, so that we can really just sort of know that there's programming, at least on a monthly basis, for all of those different just sort of populations. And had I not just sort of gone ahead and just done the 2 films, then I wouldn't have, those folks wouldn't have known about me and said, hey, let's give you this funds. So I'd say, just do it. Just make it happen, even when it doesn't look like you can make it happen permanently, but just do it.
We want to thank Greg for doing it. And there are multiple ways. If you look on the website at Better Jamaica, we want to have a relationship with your organization. God has blessed First Church with some space. And so let's see how we can collaborate to make our neighborhood better. Absolutely. Let's give Greg a big round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.